Hey there, I'm Permanent TM, the creator of the game All My Stye, and today's topic is spells and spell discovery for Magic in the Age of the Oak campaign. In an earlier video, I did an overview for how Magic works in the game and what the core elements are, and how they affected the design when I built the world around the system of Magic. You can watch that video, linked below. For this video, if you haven't watched that one, all you really need to know is that spells are 3 words each, that Magic changes every year and has to be rediscovered. Spells can have their words or forms inverted to change what they do. Casting a spell gives you more mastery, which makes subsequent castings of similar spells easier, and spellcasting requires a scroll or something like it in order to work. If you know the system and you're just here to make starting scrolls, you can jump to that part linked in the video below. Okay, so forms, those 3 magic words. The list of magic words does not change when Magic changes. And here is that list, somewhere on screen. There are 3 categories, and each category has 3 things in it. Each of those words can be inverted to 3 more. So 3 categories, 3 words with 3 inversions, a total of 18 magic words. What does change is how these words manifest and get interpreted in the world and how easy they are to use. Much of spell discovery in the season is going to be around understanding how the words are interpreted because the costs are face up every year. So let's talk about the costs of Magic. Casting a spell takes something from you. Not only does it cost a scroll in order to cast, each spell will try to take a little bit of power away from you. And the more difficult the spell is to cast, the lower level that you are while you're casting it, the more energy it will take, sometimes a dangerous amount. Casting a spell sort of works like manipulating water as it flows downhill. It always wants to take the path of least resistance, the easiest path. Characters in the world can measure that resistance really easily, so the basic costs of spells are known basically as soon as everyone wakes up, and for the players, they'll always be face up. In order to see how difficult a spell is to cast for a particular year, you take the base cost of a spell, which is default 1, and then you add on the cost of any of the component words you want to have. And remember, these words or forms, you need 1 verb, 1 power, 1 manifestation. Okay, so here is the list for how much everything costs, and let's sort of explain it a bit. In order to see how difficult the spell is to cast, you're going to take that 1, you're going to add on your words. So for our forms, we're going to pick the easiest one, which is Bind, Instinct, Resonance. So that gives you 3 words, all with a power of 0. They're the path of least resistance, the easiest thing to cast. So we're going to add our base cost of a spell 1 plus 0, 0, 0. That means it is a level 1 spell. It's one of the easiest things to cast and probably won't kill you unless you are especially frail or especially bad with Magic, and you are also probably level 1. Okay, so these are the easiest things to use. When you see the chart here, what are some more difficult things to use? Well, consider, for example, something like Destroy Air Corporeal. That is 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. For a total of 7. That is a level 7 spell as our base starting point for those words, meaning that it's relatively difficult to do anything with those keywords this year. If the campaign has discovered a specific spell, that spell will be at the intersection of one of these series of keywords. And you can sort of vibe cast to figure this sort of stuff out. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the video, but there is sort of an orbit of concepts that when you get close enough, you can understand what's in the center. When you do understand what's in the center, you have now an option for those sets of forms. You can either just cast a scroll that is those 3 words and a creative interpretation of them, which the DM will adjudicate, or you can try to combine them to a precision scroll, to the one thing that thing in the middle does very well. And if you do that, not only do you know exactly how the spell is going to work, you have the potential to master cast that spell. You use the right tool for the job, you get very good at casting it, and you can get a much more powerful impact on that spell. So let's talk a little bit about mastery. Depending on the year, Magic can be easier or harder to learn, to master. Mice who cast spells better understand how to cast more spells by following the flows that they used before and remembering the tricks they did from previous successful casts. For the Age of the Oak, when a mouse successfully casts a spell, they get a point of mastery in one of those magic words or those forms they use to cast a spell. A mouse can have up to 4 mastery in any one spell, and you need a total of 10 mastery across all of the forms of a spell in order to master cast that spell automatically. Okay, so what does that sort of mean? Well, let's consider, for example, a mouse who likes creation and earth spells, goes to create a create earth corporeal spell. They have 3 points in create, 2 points in earth, but they haven't started mastering their corporeal keyword yet. When they cast that series of keywords, they will get a total of +5 to their check. Well, they're not up to 10 yet, so they do still have to make a check, but if they're able to beat the target number for how difficult it is to cast that spell, then they would be able to master cast it some of the time. And most of the time, they're going to successfully cast as and get additional keywords, additional pieces to slowly allow them to learn. If they wait until they master create and master earth, then they'll get 4 points from each of those keywords for a total of 8. But still, that's not going to get them all the way to where they need that +10 for just casting the spell automatically. You have to have at least a little bit of mastery in each word of your spell in order to get it, because there's no other way to get to 10 otherwise. Okay, so on that earlier chart, you might have noticed that there was one thing I didn't talk about hiding down there at the bottom, and that's the inversion cost. We talked about at the beginning of the video that magic can be flipped or inverted. You can change one of the forms from one thing to another. When you go to cast a spell, you can twist the magic a little bit, put a little English on it as it leaves the chamber. This means that, in effect, each scroll is kind of 4 spells in a trench coat. You have the main 3 forms, the basic way to cast a spell, and then you can invert any one of these forms in order to change it and make it different. So that means that you have a lot more options. Not only can you explain away if it's a form scroll, something to get you close to what you're going for, even if you're not exactly sure how it works, you also can change any of those words to the opposite of the form in order to give you a more versatile piece. But doing so comes with a cost. You increase the level of that spell by the cost of the inversion, and the base cost of the spell, which if you cast correctly is always 1, amps up because you are changing it. So if you had a level 5 spell and you wanted to invert the verb, it is not only a level 6 spell, but if this level 5 spell was a normal tier 0 spell, the standard spell for the campaign, then it would normally cost 1, it would now cost 2. By that same token, if you had a level 1 spell, you had Bind, Instinct, Resonance, our basic spell for the campaign, and you flipped the power, now instead of it costing 1 to successfully cast, it'll cost 4 to successfully cast. And the spell itself will be level 4, making it not only more expensive, but harder to cast. But then again, if you really need that other spell word, you really need to change the spell, maybe the cost is worth it and the danger that comes along with it. Okay, so in the Age of the Oak, if you flip a verb, it'll cost 1. If you flip a power, it costs 3. And you flip a manifestation, it costs 2. There are classes, skills, items, environments that can alter these costs, but these are the base rules that you'll be able to figure out and work with, and those other things will happen much later as you get more experience in the campaign. The main thing is you get rewarded for bringing the right tool for the job, but in a pinch, if you're knowledgeable or lucky, you can take the tools you have and flip them backwards and use a screwdriver as a hammer if you find a nail that really is sticking out. All right, so let's kind of put these pieces together into the only spell that is uncovered. If you are new here and you want to kind of have a vibe for exactly how spell discovery functions first, you can pause the video. Link down below is a little activity that'll walk you through the idea. That activity is going to sort of mimic multiple people casting the same series of words and finding out through successful casts what a lot of the elements of the spell are. Once you have a lot of the concepts that are on the outside ring of your orbit of your spell, you can reasonably try to figure out how all these concepts lead into a single cohesive whole to get to the central spell. Okay. Have you done the activity? If you don't want to do the activity, you can keep going. But if you haven't done the activity and you want to do the activity, I'm about to spoil it, and here we go. Friendship. Friendship is the precision spell that is Bind, Instinct, Resonance. And as we know, that's a base tier 0, no extra power, no crazy stuff spell. And the level is 1. 1 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0. The base target number for this spell is, as any spell, it's going to be 13 if you're casting something your own level, and if you are over leveled, it can go down to base 10. If something's above you, you just add 3 to the cost, which you'll see in this little thing down below. Okay, well, what does it do? When you use Friendship and you make a spell attack against the resolve, so the mental defenses of a creature within 30, on a success, that target treats you as a trusted friend until they recover from the effects of the spell. When an action is taken that contradicts that bond, they can also make a recovery. So recovery is something that happens at the end of every round, and you are going to be making a check against their recovery value to see how hard it is for them to wake up. And the more times you make a recovery check, the harder that check gets. Basically, the target number you need goes up by 1 until it is impossible to succeed. Well, we talked earlier that this is a very precise thing. This is exactly what these 3 keywords can do in one specific way. There's lots of other things that you can do, but what do you get as a reward? Well, this allows you to mastercast the spell. And if you mastercast Friendship, which means you either have all of the keywords mastered, or you successfully cast the spell very well, you really critically succeed your spellcraft check, then recovery checks to get over this charm for Friendship, instead of being made at the end of each round, at the end of every 10-second interval, instead, they're made at the end of each dungeon turn, which is roughly a 30-minute interval. So you're going to have this thing last for way longer. Okay, well, what if we need to change any of those keywords we talked about? We've got 3 keywords we can flip, and we're going to flip them in the order that they appear on the spell. Always verb, power, manifestation. So if we flip the verb from bind to unleash, well, we don't know what it does. We kind of have to figure it out as we get there. Once the players go and explore things and learn more things in the campaign, learn how these things function together, they'll be able to start writing in what the precision spell is that is unleash instead of bind. But they do know that that spell is going to be level 2 and that the base number they're going to be looking for is 16. It's also going to cost them 2 willpower. It's going to cost effectively 2 mana if they cast that version. By the same token, intent, flipping instinct to intent, we don't know what that does, but it will be level 4, and the base target number will be 22. Now, as an idea here, you're always adding whatever your mental stat is into your spellcraft, which is probably a 1, a 2, maybe a 3, or even a 4 if you're incredibly lucky, to your d20. So let's say you are that gifted mouse. That means you're trying to get a total of 22 on the die, and you're only adding 4 to your d20. It's going to be difficult to successfully cast that spell. Lastly, we can flip the manifestation into dissonance, which again, we don't know what it does, but we do know whatever that effect is going to be, it's going to be level 3, and the base number we're looking for is 19. Okay, so we did a little adventure about how we can discover a spell. Can we explain it in more detail? Sure. So, spell discovery. When you make a spell in the Age of the Oak, you're going to craft a scroll that has these things, and you can make a precision scroll if you know the word. If you don't know, or rather word, you know the spell that is in the middle of the words. If you don't know it, you just craft a scroll that is a form scroll, and you have to go and interpret it out on adventure. Not only can you also gain mastery from casting the spell successfully, you can get hints to what's in the middle of the circle in that little activity we play. The expression is displayed to the DM as a spell in the center, and then it's orbited by all of these concepts. When you cast, the DM will look at the combinations of words and look at your description for the spell that you want to cast and make a judgment call to see if what is proposed can work. Sometimes that means it just doesn't work at all. It doesn't match any of the concepts, any of the keywords expressed here, and you'll get a, sorry, you attempt to cast and nothing works. You don't lose the scroll, you don't lose the willpower, the mana used to try to invoke the spell, but you do lose your turn. And for mice, they can only really learn things when the chips are down and when you're out on adventure. So losing your turn when it's important and the world is dramatic and you're probably trying to be eaten is inherently dangerous without the extra penalty of losing your resources and your mind as well. Okay, if you get kind of close, but not exact, then the DM can reveal one of the pieces of the orbit, one of the descriptions, and allow the players to cast a vaguely similar spell. If it's really far off, they might increase the cost slightly, or give you the option to still cast it at an increased cost, or you can pull back if you're like, no, I have an idea of this, but I would prefer to lose my action than to try to potentially risk casting at an increased cost. If one or more of the things are missed entirely, that's when you just can't cast the spell. So lastly, we're going to just talk about discovery and mastery. All these things have to happen on adventure. If you are at home testing theories, yeah, that's kind of nice and all, but figuring how magic will actually work on adventure takes stakes, and that's what we're expressing here. You can sort of twist spells to do whatever if you have all the time of the world, but we're talking about evocation in a way where we need to know right now what this does. Eventually, in order to kind of explain this and make this work a little bit better, we'll have an app for displaying discoveries for the whole campaign, so that each player can look at the orbits together in one big web of spells and then work together to burn away the fog through experimentation and adventure. For now, we've got to deal with Discord and spreadsheets. Okay, so we've got in the Discord, we'll have a spell discovery channel where you guys can discuss what sort of things that you've learned, and if anyone comes up with a wiki or anything like that, they can link it in there. Once the app is ready to go, we will also put a link to the spell discovery section of the app in the Discord channel. Now, if you're here to just say, I have a vague idea, or I don't really want to listen to a huge long video about how spells work, just tell me how to make a scroll. Okay, so if you're going to be making a scroll, you're going to be looking at making a Bind Instinct Resonance scroll. That is your starting scroll. Now, you can, if you want to, you can make it just slightly harder to cast. If you've got a little bit of chip in your shoulder to start off the campaign, or you really like a slightly different change of keywords, you can change any one of those keywords for one other keyword. Now, the value of that is always going to be 1. So Bind Instinct Resonance 000. You can change any one of those zeros into a 1. So you can make a Create Instinct Resonance or a Perceive Instinct Resonance. If you can look at this chart, you'll be able to see the combinations that work out. And if you look at the census below the section where your weapons are and your shields are, you'll be able to see there is an exhaustive list of exactly which combinations are allowed for your starting scroll. Now, this starting scroll does stay with your character. This is sort of their graduation certificate to say that they are now able to go out on an adventure, and it doesn't move between your mice. By the same token, if you do not have a scroll, and by have a scroll, I mean you are one of the mental casting mice, so your wizard, your druid, and your warlord. Warlord has the option to have a seed if they really want one. If you're a fighter, a guardian, or a rogue, instead of starting with a scroll, you start with a Seed of Hope, which is a sort of like a potion that'll help you not die in really bad situations. Okay, so you've got your starter scroll. You know, in order to cast, rather than reading a rule book that says exactly what all these things work on, you're just going to vibe cast. Think about these words and what they might mean, and then mash them together and see what sort of magic you can make happen. Sometimes you're going to find something really powerful and interesting to do, but sometimes you're going to get close-ish. It's going to be a difficult, muddy process of experimentation, but that's how exploration works. Sometimes you get exactly where you need to be in the first shot, and everybody's amazed, and sometimes you wander around in the dark, and the best thing you can do is to get home without getting eaten. I'll see you in the Discord, see you in the campaign at table. Have a good day.